I didn't have time to attend the funeral. I had to prepare for the move. After the funeral, I returned home once, but when I entered the house, I saw Matteo and Emery. Looking closely at the room, the furniture in the house had been replaced with Matteo's. On the other hand, my belongings that had been in my house until now were thrown out into the garden. As I stood there stunned, Emery opened her mouth confidently. "From today, we will live in this house. Please leave quickly. Why don't you go to a nursing home?" Emery said so with a smile, and I answered with a smile too. "It's okay. I never thought you would do something like this on the day of the funeral, but I'm not surprised anymore by anything you do." When I said that, my son and Emery had a slightly surprised expression. It must have been something that the eldest son and his wife never dreamed of happening. I am Josephine, 64 years old. I am a housewife who works part-time in the neighborhood. I have a son named Matteo. Matteo has been a kind and easygoing child since he was little. He was also popular in class, serving as the student council president. After graduating from college, he joined a company that operates nationwide. Therefore, the head office is located in New York, but for the first few years, he was transferred to the countryside. I was very lonely to be separated from Matteo, who had always been with me, but I felt the growth of my son one by one, so my husband and I decided to send Matteo off with a smile. "Matteo, be careful with your body. Eat well." Then Matteo smiled back. "I know. Don't worry about me, worry about yourself. Be careful not to get sick, Mom. Dad, stay healthy too." Matteo said that and moved to a new place. When he started living alone, he often called us. "Your father and I are fine too. How about Matteo's work? Are you doing well?" "Oh, I've only been working for a few months, but I feel like I'm growing because I'm getting a lot of guidance from my seniors." Every time I heard Matteo's voice, I was relieved. "Are you eating properly? Be careful not to get heat stroke." "Yeah. Recently, I've been going out to drink a lot because I have a lot of friends, but I'm trying to eat a balanced diet as much as possible. When I hear my mother's voice, I feel like I want to eat my mother's homemade food. But I'll do my best here for a little longer. I think I'll come home once when it gets cold. Mom, thank you for always worrying about me." My husband and I were relieved that our son was becoming independent as a new member of society. But by the time autumn came, Matteo stopped contacting us. He said he would come home once in the winter, but he hasn't even contacted us to say whether he'll come home for New Year's. In the end, he didn't contact us at all even at the end of the year, and he didn't even reply to our emails, so I called Matteo's smartphone from here. Then I heard a woman's voice on the phone that I had never heard before. "Hello, who is this?" I was worried that I had dialed the wrong number, but I decided to ask the woman on the other end of the phone. Is this Matteo's phone?" "Yes, but who are you? Are you an acquaintance of Matteo's?" Behind the woman's voice, I heard a man's voice. "Emery, who are you talking to?" It was definitely Matteo's voice. The woman called Emery answered Matteo in a loud voice. "Some old lady is calling. Matteo, do you want to talk?" Matteo answered the phone with a laugh. "Hello, who is this?" "It's me, your mother." Matteo started talking without saying anything to the woman who called me an old lady. "Mom, what's up? Why are you calling me out of the blue?" Matteo spoke in a cold tone. "Matteo, you haven't contacted us at all lately, have you? You used to contact us a lot until recently, so what happened all of a sudden? Your father is worried too. Are you coming home this New Year's?" When I said that, I heard a big sigh over the phone. And, was the person who answered the phone Matteo's girlfriend? Then Matteo suddenly returned his words to me in a strong tone. "What the hell, you're interfering with everything. I'm not a kid anymore. Give me a break, you old hag." Matteo shouted like that and hung up the phone immediately. He had shown a slightly rebellious attitude when he was a child, but I never expected him to say such abusive words after becoming a working adult. I sighed and gently put down my smartphone. Then my husband in the next room looked at me and asked me worriedly, "What's wrong? Is Matteo okay?" I told him that a woman with a bad mouth had answered my son's smartphone and that Matteo had shouted at me to leave him alone. Well, he's also proof that he's grown up since he started living alone and meeting various people. Well, let's watch him for a while. My husband said that, so I decided to trust my son. One day, a year later, Matteo contacted us for the first time in a long time. He said he had been transferred from a local job to a store in New York and would stop by our house once. Also, it seems that there is something he wants to talk about. I had a bad feeling about it. The day after I received a message, my son came home. As soon as he opened his mouth, he said, "I have someone I want to introduce." Then, a tall woman with heavy makeup entered. Matteo said, "This is Emery. I'm going to marry her." At Matteo's words, my husband and I looked at each other. Marriage? Is that true? Emery, without greeting us who were meeting her for the first time, opened her mouth. "This is Matteo's parents' house? It's kind of old-fashioned. I wanted to live in a more luxurious house. A house with a chandelier." Hearing her voice, I realized something. This woman was the one who answered the phone when I called Matteo a year ago. I signaled my husband casually. My husband seemed to notice my signal and spoke seriously to Emery. "Are you two really thinking of getting married?" Then Emery, as if talking to a friend, opened her mouth to my husband with a slight laugh. "Hey old man, how do I show you I'm serious? Maybe I should give a passionate kiss here?" "No, that's embarrassing." "Hey, Matteo's dad, you're sexually harassing me at your age." Then Matteo, laughing along with Emery, started talking. "Sorry, Emery. My father is a troublesome person." My husband's face turned red, and he looked like he was about to hit the two of them. I was also taken aback by their attitude and couldn't find the words to respond. My husband and I opposed Matteo's marriage, but our words didn't get through. Matteo and Emery didn't listen to our opinions at all and submitted their marriage registration. Furthermore, they had started their newlywed life by renting a nearby apartment. "What will you do about the wedding?" In response to my question, the two answered indifferently. "We don't have to do it. It's a hassle to call friends." That's right, it's a waste of money. However, whether the two were loose with money or lacked money, they regularly came to our house to eat. I was happy to see my son's face, but Emery complained about my cooking. "Oh, this fried chicken is a bit burnt. Can't you make it cleaner?" I had been told many times, so I warned Emery strongly. "If you have a complaint, you don't have to eat it." Then, without any remorse, Emery returned against my words. "Then I won't eat. I'll go somewhere and eat pizza. It's fine if you make my meal casually. I don't expect much from your cooking." In this way, the relationship between my son and Emery and us, the couple, continued to be bad. In the midst of this, our family was faced with another trial. My husband had to be hospitalized due to poor health, and a detailed examination at that time revealed that his chronic diabetes had worsened considerably. The results of the blood test showed that many organs were affected. The doctor told us that his condition could deteriorate at any time. Perhaps worried about my husband's condition, Matteo and Emery visited his hospital room. The two left the room immediately after their visit, but I could hear their voices from the other side of the hospital room door. I listened to their conversation, feeling a bit guilty. Then, the content of their conversation was unbelievable. "Hey, Matteo, when your father dies, let's make the house ours," Emery said. "But my mother is still healthy," Matteo replied. It seemed they were discussing what would happen when my husband passed away. "It would be nice if your mother followed him to the other world," Emery said. "Yeah, but looking at that old woman, she won't die that easily," Matteo replied. When my son said that, I heard Emery sigh heavily. I was filled with anger at their disrespectful remarks about my husband, who was fighting his illness, and me, who was nursing him. "What's wrong? Those two have already left, haven't they?" My husband asked, noticing my state. I suppressed my rising anger and told my husband about the conversation I had heard in the hallway. Then, I noticed that my husband, who had been quietly listening, was also turning red. Matteo and Emery were talking about that. My husband muttered, looking down a little. Then, in a small voice, my husband said, "I have an idea." There was a lot of force in his words. I wonder what kind of idea it is. The next day, my husband called Matteo and Emery to his hospital room. Of course, I was also present. "What's the rush?" "I'm busy," Matteo said, looking displeased. Emery also frowned. "I'm going to talk about the inheritance after I die, so listen carefully," my husband said. At the word inheritance, Emery suddenly looked happy. Since there's only one child, all the inheritance will be Mateo's, right? There's about $100,000 in the bank. The beneficiary of my insurance is your mother, so that's hers. But I'm thinking of leaving all the bank assets to Mateo. Not a bad deal, right? Use it wisely. When my husband said this to our son, Emery opened her eyes wide and started talking. What about that house? It has a large garden and I think it's worth more than $100,000. At Emery's words, Mateo also looked at my husband with sparkling eyes. Dad, what about the inheritance of the house? The house will be in your mother's name. She's going to live there from now on. At my husband's words, Mateo and Emery strongly objected. Why? Mom has insurance money, and we only have bank assets. That's not fair. Give us that house. Emery also followed Mateo and opened her mouth. We don't need the bank's money, so please give us the house. My husband and I looked at each other and signaled for confirmation. Then my husband made a decision to our son. Okay, I understand. I'll make that house yours. In return, all the money in the bank will be given to your mother, okay? Then the two of them were jumping for joy. I wonder if they forgot that this is a hospital room. My husband continued to talk, but as I said earlier, your mother is going to live in that house, so even if I'm gone and the house is in Mateo's name, you have to let your mother continue to live there. Yeah, I understand, Mateo replied casually to my husband's words. My husband, seeing Mateo's attitude, sighed and continued to talk. As long as your mother is healthy, allowing her to live in that house is the condition for giving Mateo that house. Are both of you okay with that? My husband's words were answered by our son in a bothersome manner. I understand, Mateo said. You don't have to emphasize it so much, it's okay, Emery said. After hearing the words of the two of them clearly, my husband told them. Then, I'll leave what we discussed just now in my will. Then our son left the hospital room cheerfully without even saying goodbye to us. My husband and I looked at each other and sighed as we watched them go. About 2 months later, my husband's condition rapidly deteriorated. I wished he could somehow survive, but my prayers were in vain and he passed away. I was preparing for the funeral as the chief mourner, but even then, Mateo and Emery didn't seem to be helping me. On the contrary, they were only talking about inheritance. They were probably discussing how to use it. Then the funeral began. Since he was someone I had lived with for 40 years, I was filled with a sadness I had never felt before. But even when I was giving the chief mourner's speech, my children were whispering to each other. But after a while, when I looked at their seats, I noticed that Mateo and Emery were not there. And they didn't show up until the funeral was over. After the funeral, I returned home once, but I noticed that the key to my house was open. Did I forget to lock the door? Then I heard a loud noise from inside, so I suspiciously opened the door, and there were Mateo and Emery. What are you two doing here? When I said that, the two of them casually said, we didn't have time to attend the funeral. We had to prepare for the move. When I looked closely at the room, I saw that the furniture in the house had been replaced with Mateo's. On the other hand, my belongings that had been in the house until now were thrown out in the yard. As I stood there dumbfounded, Emery confidently opened her mouth. From today, we will live in this house. Please leave as soon as possible. Why don't you go to a nursing home? When Emery said that with a laugh, I also smiled and answered. That's fine. I never thought you would do something like this on the day of the funeral. I'm not surprised at anything you do anymore. When I said that, my children looked a little surprised. Are you really going to leave? Yes, but it's strange to go to a facility when I'm so healthy. So, I'm going to rent an apartment. When they heard my words, the two of them were smiling. After that, as I told them, I moved to a rental apartment. It was a one-room apartment, but it was very comfortable to live without seeing those two. About a month later, I received a call from Emery on my smartphone. The lawyer told us that the house is in your name. What does that mean? I explained to Emery about the inheritance of the house. My husband said that the condition for putting the house in Mateo's name was that I would continue to live in the house as long as I was healthy. That's called a conditional will, and if you don't meet the conditions, you lose the right to inherit. The moment you kicked me out of the house, you lost the right to inherit the house. Mateo and Emery turned pale at my words. So, what the lawyer said is true. No, no. That's a lie. I couldn't forgive them for preparing to move during the funeral. Then, there's one more thing I have to tell you. The two of them listened to my story with blue faces. I'm going to kick you two out of that house and cut ties with you. Then, Emery retaliated with words towards me. What did you say? I won't accept that. This house is ours, so we can't just leave. Even if we lose the right to inherit, I will live in this house. It can't be helped if it becomes a form of living with my mother-in-law, but it's ridiculous that we have to leave. However, I heard my son's voice from behind Emery over the phone. Emery, I'm sorry. We've lost. The effect of the will is legally guaranteed. Then Emery said damn it and hung up the phone. The lawyer who contacted my son is an acquaintance of mine. I heard from him later that when he told my son that he had no ownership of his parents' house because he had broken the conditions, my son looked very regretful. But then my son told me that he had a debt of several tens of thousands of dollars. Apparently, they had been playing quite a bit while my husband was in the hospital, going to bars all night, gambling, and living it up. They still weren't satisfied with their play, and they played to the fullest even by borrowing money. They thought they could pay it back right away if they sold the house, so they were able to borrow money without resistance. After that, Emery contacted me wanting the house back. But the words I heard in the hospital room were burned into my brain. You guys, you were saying things like you wanted me to follow my husband to the other world soon, weren't you? You heard that conversation. That's in bad taste. I couldn't forgive Emery for making such a cocky statement at this point. Why should I help people who say such things? This house is now mine. You two deal with the debt. I contacted my son and told him that if he didn't break up with Emery, I would cut ties with him. Then, my son chose Emery over me. I was so ridiculous that I started to cry. After that, the two of them left my house and were looking for a new house, but the only place they could rent with debt was an apartment that was over 50 years old. My son is still working hard at his job, but the debt is quite large, so it will be a while before he can pay it off. I heard from a co-worker that my son now regrets choosing Emery. Well, it's his own fault. I hope he continues to work hard without slacking off. On the other hand, I cut ties with my son and am now enjoying living alone. Immersed in memories with my husband, I leave the house today for my part-time job. How was this story? Please also subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.